Jammu Kashmir, what our data is clearly suggesting that 370 was not really the biggest issue. The top three, they were exactly replicable as in Haryana.
Yet no one wants to vote for the party that is perceptionally perhaps seen as a Hindu party.
Even though Valley is almost like 95% Muslim, Jammu is not 95% Hindu. Almost like 40% of the population is still Muslims and minorities over there. A strong anti-BJP sentiment in the Valley that has always been like that. I was surprised to see that BJP was, at least in our data, close, very close, number 2 in 3 of the Valley seats. Mehbooba Mufti is on the verge of becoming politically equivalent of Mayawati in Uttar Pradesh. Jammu doesn't really get enough representativeness. That would be a sorry state of affairs.
Hi, you're watching The Times of India. I'm Aditi Prasad, and with me is Yashwant Deshmukh, of course, needs no introduction, the founder director of CVOTER, one of the most prominent polling agencies in the country. The first set of elections after the 2024 general election, which of course left BJP with a reduced majority, and the India Alliance, of course, in a much more stronger position. Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir. Most exit polls are suggesting that there's no saffron surge in either of the two states. Haryana almost being given to the Congress, and of course Jammu and Kashmir, again a very complex polity, much more complex than any other state in this country. So let's dive straight into Jammu and Kashmir first, and tell us what the CVOTER data says about Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah, Aditi, I mean, Jammu Kashmir, as you just mentioned, is a very special state. It's a very different from the demographic and the conflict and the historical perspective all in one. What our data is clearly suggesting that is advantage National Conference in Valley region and its advantage BJP in the Jammu region. Now, data also clearly tells that along with the Congress, the National Conference should be in a position to form the government. If the others, independent, smaller parties score really well in the Valley, then they might be falling short by a few numbers, but then PDP might get that many numbers. And PDP, even though basically against National Conference in their local politics, but PDP has clearly said that they remain within the India bloc, and if the situation arises, their first choice would be more of going with the Congress and National Conference rather than going with the BJP. Something which we did in the past, and they seem to have been punished by the Valley voters, by the way, because of that experiment.
CVOTER numbers. Jammu and Kashmir viewers, you all know, have 90 seats. And Yashwant, if I'm not mistaken, 47 seats in Kashmir, 43 seats in Jammu.
Right.
The seat share as of now, according to your exit poll data, suggests National Conference going with 40 to 48 seats overall, BJP 27 to 32 seats, PDP 6 to 12 seats, which is a deep dive from last time around, which was almost a decade ago, and others, of course, between 6 and 11 seats.
Yeah.
This is the first election after the abrogation of Article 370. The Naya Kashmir, so to speak, that we are talking about, and everyone is talking about. Terror is down, law and order is better, tourism is booming. Yet no one wants to vote for the party that is perceptionally perhaps seen as a Hindu party. Is that how we read the voter sentiment?
That's pretty much, and the very fact that we might even see a government which is completely Valley driven, and that has been the case all along in the 75 years, Aditi, and that remains to be seen whether there would be any change or in that, because of course Congress has gone weakened in Jammu region, and National Conference used to win a significantly big number of seats in Jammu at one point of time. I remember the 1996 election, then when we carried the first ever election poll in Kashmir, but done by any agency, whomsoever. You remember that we did a cover for the week magazine. At that point of time, National Conference did manage to win significantly big number of seats even in Jammu region. So National Conference, even though it's a Valley party, but it also got some footprint in the Jammu, because I think it's important to underline here, even though Valley is almost like 95% Muslim, Jammu is not 95% Hindu. Jammu still has a significantly large chunk of almost like 40% of the population is still Muslims and minorities over there. So it is a Hindu majority region, Jammu, but it does not necessarily give all Hindu MLAs in that way. Having
Right.
said that, it is important for us to keep an eye on how many seats Congress wins in the Jammu regions. Because if Congress manages a decent enough show, something like 10 to 15 seats, then it can claim that they are representing Jammu in the cabinet. They are representing Jammu in the government formation. But if
Hmm.
Congress doesn't do well, then it will become a valley thing, and that is not going to be a very healthy for the democratic setup, because largely speaking, it has been the complaint of Ladakh, erstwhile Ladakh and Jammu, that in the Jammu Kashmir state, the previous state, they never got a say in the power. It was
And that's
always
going to,
value
and
driven.
status quo is going to continue if that happens this time.
Exactly. So we understand well that yes, there is a strong anti-BJP sentiment in the valley that has always been like that. There is strong pro-BJP sentiment in the Jammu, and yet, we have never seen Jammu getting a proper share of power. The only time any Jammu guy became a chief minister was Ghulam Nabi Azad, when Congress PDP government was in shape. But even then, they had to pick up a Muslim from Jammu region to become the chief minister. So
Right.
what I'm trying to say, that these kind of things are running deep emotion even in Jammu. Ladakh is a separate union territory. They have their own problems. That's not in the case anymore. It is between Jammu
Hmm.
and Kashmir. And any democratic setup, I mean, formation of the government has to take care of the emotions on both sides of the region.
In your surveys, what did you find? Did the fact that they're not a state anymore and they're a union territory, is that something that affected their voting choice? Because we saw a lot of enthusiasm as far as voting, which is unheard of in
Yeah.
J&K elections, right? What is the voter sentiment with regard to the state, or the erstwhile state, now a union territory, being not a state or full-fledged state anymore?
Well, that's
Did
a
that
that's a
impact
very
it?
good question, Aditi, because on your show I can at least get on to that kind of archival thing, because your audience should know this, that we have been doing survey in Kashmir for more than 20 years, and we were the one who did the first ever poll in Kashmir. Forget about
Hmm,
anything else. Uh,
hmm,
but back 20 years back, I remember the wounds of 1987 elections were very fresh, and when we went there to do the surveys in 1995, 96 time, at that point of time in Valley, almost 82% had said that they do not believe in the process. They fear the polls will be rigged like 1987 elections. And that became the cover. BBC covered it. It became the cover of Week magazine that 82% in the Valley feel the polls will be rigged. So from that emotion to current status of participation, where not a single voice of anywhere saying that polls are compromised or people are being forced to come out and vote, people do not want to vote, security agencies are forcing, and those kind of information, none of that thing came in. There was a significantly large turnout. Even in the separatist bastions of the downtown Srinagar, the turnout was almost like 10 times higher than what it used to be. In some of the seats in Srinagar, I have seen turnout like as low as 2%, 3%. They used to be. Those seats have turned out like 30%, 35%, 40% this time. It's still less than the 70, 80% that with that we would love to have, but it's a significant jump. So overall, turnout has significantly gone up in the valley. Big number of independent, big number of smaller parties that have gone into the fray. Yes, the emotion remains big time against the dropping of 370. It's an identity issue for them. That's why so much of anger with the BJP in the valley. But then BJP has also surprisingly made insignificant inroad in that side. I was surprised to see that BJP was, at least in our data, close, very close, number two in three of the valley seats, particularly in the upper region where we have the Pahari vote, we have the Bakarwal vote, we have the Shia votes, and so on and so forth. There are significant chunk of the tribal votes in those seats, and BJP has made significant inroads. But Valley largely remains anti BJP big time. But it's not just up to Valley, I guess, that Jammu remains anti Valley. These are the two regions which need a long term healing, but and to understand that besides every animosity, there is a communal angle, there is a security angle, there is a issue of Kashmiri Pandits being felled out and forced to leave the valley region. So there are all kind of deep fault lines which have been cosmetically covered up, and these deep fault lines, Aditi, are take their own time to heal. They take their own time
Right.
to cover up.
You just said that you're surprised to see that in 2 to 3 seats in the valley, the BJP has seems to have made inroads. Of course, big achievement for this government, the BJP government, to at least instead of stone pelting in the valley during elections or boycotting during elections, you're seeing heavy participation during elections. That itself is a huge achievement. But of course, the sentiment largely remains anti-BJP despite whatever changes have come about, which is fair, which I understand because of the deep wounds that from the past that remain. However, the breakup that you're saying, like in BJP, you said that you've given 27 to 31 seats in Jammu to the BJP out of the 43, and in the Valley you've given them 0 to 1 seats. Now BJP, I think, has only fought 19 out of the 47 seats there.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly,
So
exactly.
so what can change? Can there be more BJP representation in the valley? I mean, I don't know. You've given them 0 to 1 seats, but you are saying that they are, making inroads there. And then I
I
think
don't see,
largely,
Aditi, get them getting a lot of traction in the valley. What I see that there could be a possibly a traction for the Congress in the Jammu region, possibly few seats traction for National Conference in the Jammu region. That is a possibility. I don't really see BJP because the BJ it's the core identity politics issue, Aditi.
hmm,
BJP being anti 370, it's a core identity issue that was there. And Valley has been completely anti BJP all along based on those lines. It's also Hindu Muslim. Let's be honest and be frank about it,
yeah,
admitting that it has been a Hindu Muslim issue as well, in that way. Having said that, I believe, and I genuinely believe, that if we look into big number of states, countries in Central Europe, Western Europe, where the first past the post system is not there, it's a proportional representativeness system there. We see extreme right and extreme left forced to get down together and form the government because
hmm,
the numbers, the public, the numbers that are given by them, it makes virtually impossible for anybody to form the government.
true.
So that's also part and partial of the democratic exercise, I would say, that you force people with diverse opinion and extremely
Together.
anti thing to come together and at least getting agreed on some common minimum program which could be for the larger welfare of the society and the voters. That's how the democracy. So ours is the first past the post system, so we do not have PR system where things, but the results are almost coming out like that. And I would be very carefully of observing how the government is going to be formed, because if PDP goes with the NC and the Congress, and if it becomes a valley kind of government, uh, where the Jammu doesn't really get enough
Rep-
representativeness,
hmm.
that would be a sorry state of affair.
Defeats the entire purpose of whatever uh,
Exactly.
trying to achieve be achieved by the abrogation of 370, and sort of bringing people together, making them understand that we're all one and part of
Yeah.
India, and so on and so forth. But you spoke about PDP. Mehbooba Mufti's story is another very telling story in the exit poll data that's coming out. 10% vote share, and
Yeah.
most of the
To
votes
12
were
seats. Yeah.
taken away by others having
Yeah.
28% vote share.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
I think Mehbooba Mufti is on the verge of becoming politically equivalent of Mayawati in Uttar Pradesh. You know, having a huge, inheriting a huge mandate, being there, done that, but then slow and steady, just losing the relevance in the state politics. And I
Is the
think
is
going
the
with the
is her
BJP,
partnership is her partnership, yeah, with BJP? That's what I was
I think
asking
that
about.
has hurt her bad, really bad. I think,
Nice.
unfortunately for her, it was a very brave decision, but she could not pull it off. Probably her father would have been a much better position to pull it off. maybe, I don't know, I cannot say for sure, because it was a decision taken by first by her father. Then after Mufti Saab's death, she took her really long time to negotiate and get back into the power, trying to balance the both the things, rather than taking that decision and saying it to the public in the valley that I know you are anti BJP, but if you tell me you have a solution to this, if you feel you can do business without the BJP while the BJP is ruling New Delhi and everything is being, done and dusted there. So she should have taken the bull by the horn and taken there. But what I feel, she tried to balance both sides, that the separatist sentiment, the anti-BJP sentiment, anti-India sentiment, trying to ride that tiger as well. The moment it was flipped, that tiger went away, and now that is why those voters have swung to the others and independents and the separatist sentiment, emotion candidates in that way, and she is left with nothing. Just to remind the viewers, it's not the first time a Valley party went with the BJP. Remember, Farooq Abdullah went with Vajpayee.
Absolutely.
Omar Abdullah was pretty much a minister in the Vajpayee government. So, but that didn't harm him. As long as 370 was intact and Farooq Abdullah could weave a narrative that we are doing this because we want a good deal for the valley.
Right.
I do not think that Mehbooba Mufti could sell it properly. She was just
And
trying
she's
two
paying
things,
the
two
price
typing
for
two
that.
things, and she could not do it.
Right. But in terms of preferred CM, your data gives a huge
Yeah,
margin to Omar Abdullah,
yeah.
and more people want to see him as the chief minister than any other party. And then of course Mehbooba Mufti is there, and Ravinder Raina and Ghulam Nabi Azad is obviously non-entity. Talk to us
This
about
is the,
this.
by the way, this data is from the Valley region. The numbers which are coming on your screen right
Screen.
now,
Right.
and in the Kashmir, Jammu region, the numbers are a bit different. Overall numbers are a bit lower than this number. But yes, you are right. Omar Abdullah remains almost 38 or 39% overall express the sentiment they want to see him as the chief minister.
Right. And what about overall? What percentage? Jammu and Kashmir,
I think
Jammu.
he remains number one. Oh, he remains slightly less than 40%, but he remains number one even in the Jammu region as the chief ministerial candidate, because he is not hated by the Jammu people. Omar has a profile which is not extreme profile, and he is very affable character. And
Yes.
people from Jammu who see that probably BJP is not going to get the numbers to form the majority of its own. Even a big chunk of those BJP supporters do name Omar Abdullah as a possible CM candidate.
If this data holds, what does this say about Jammu and Kashmir, and uh, especially about the democratic exercise in Jammu and Kashmir? This whole thing about
All right.
the rift
Yeah.
between Jammu, Kashmir, having again a Kashmir-led sort of governance. If
So
these
the
numbers,
funny things first, Aditi, I was looking into the issues and other data captures that we do, not just asking which party you have voted today. I was expecting in Jammu and Kashmir that number one and the biggest issue would be 370 or removal of 370, and that there would be extreme sentiments of pro 370 in the valley and anti 370 in the Jammu.
Hmm.
Surprise, surprise, 370 was not really the biggest issue. The
Oh
issues that
wow,
were coming in the daily bread
why
and
does
butter
it pass?
issues.
And people have
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
accepted it.
exactly. Exactly. So the unemployment was a really, really huge issue in the Valley region, particularly. Price rise and other things. Security angle were a big issue in Jammu. Yes, it is related to 370. Jammu people were more in favor of removing 370 rather than the Valley people. Obviously, it's a I mean taken for granted stand. But oddly enough, as far as 370 is concerned, it is an issue, but it did not come out as an electoral issue. So people were done and dusted with that. People were like,
Interesting.
okay, it's done. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. it is over.
Personally,
And
I think
I,
that's a great movement forward for the entire region. And
of
having
course,
issues
yes,
like unemployment and price rise, like the rest of the country, really, those are the issues which the
exactly.
rest of the country votes on.
Exactly. So the topmost issues, if you look into the top three, they were exactly replicable as in Haryana.
Wow.
So that's the normalization of politics, if I may say so. That's the normalization of politics. That doesn't mean that the emotions are not running high on 370. People are against removal in the valley, and people are for removal in the Jammu region. Uh, Even though people in Jammu are also asking that did it really impact in that way, the way it should have impacted? Um, that good points of 370 being removed are still to be seen in the economy and other side of the aspects. People are waiting for that. But yes, law and order, security, that remains the big issue for the Jammu people as well. The relatively calmer environment, business going up, more activities, tourists coming in, these kind of things, and the more opportunities. This is
Hmm.
where everybody has to look into. I think the people of Jammu and Kashmir very clear for their own reason, good, bad, ugly, the way they look at 370, they somehow feel that chapter is done. So the campaign of that, if we shall come, we will restore 370, nobody is buying that, because everybody knows for sure that nobody is coming in the center with the kind of majority to redo 370, and no party, including Congress, has the worth its salt that they can take a national emotion on 370 and redo it. So that chapter is closed.
True.
What I
Hmm.
feel the youth of that state or union territory, as you said right now, is clearly looking forward is towards the aspirational economy, more jobs, more opportunities, better future, and not just the central government, but whomsoever forms the state government, it has a huge challenge at hand on how to cope up with that kind of emotion and that kind of expectation from the new government. Jammu Kashmir, one thing is for sure, is not really suffering from a Stockholm syndrome, which
Hmm.
the turnout has clearly suggested. They are not in the Stockholm syndrome of 370. Done and dusted, it is done, but they are very much looking for the future with their um, own baggage of image issues with the BJP or National Conference within the two
And I think
regions.
that's the most heartening takeaway that I take from the exit poll data that you've shared with us today. That the normalcy and Jammu and Kashmir voting enthusiastically, 370 not being the biggest issue out there, limping towards normalcy, limping towards what the rest of the country, the issues that resonate in the rest of the country during elections. And that, I think, is the big takeaway from the exit poll data from Jammu and Kashmir, whoever, of course, wins on the 8th. But
Absolutely, absolutely, Aditi. That's the one big takeaway. And because, I mean, 20 years back, I remember when we were doing the first ever poll, I personally had visited on a ESD with our Unite Chiefs, Bureau Chiefs ESD, with our reporter on the backside. I have traveled to Anantnag, Palma, everywhere. I mean, you can think of,
hmm,
and at the Kashmir Valley, which I had seen at that point of time, and the Kashmir which I see today are poles apart. Let me put it this way. Yes, there will be separatist emotion and those kind of historical baggages will be there, but I also feel कि झेलम में बहुत पानी बह गया है, and it's for the new government, new leadership, the youth, young voters of the valley and Jammu to decide on what kind of future they are looking at. If they can take the thing to the next level, deliver on that, I think that will have a much bigger impact than anything else, any campaign or any narrative whatsoever.